take a look at one of the most hotly contested races in Ohio, Congressional District 12.
It's the pipe bombs, it's the Kavanaugh effect, and I think it's actually galvanizing support from both sides.
And then coming up with so many close races here in Ohio, I'm going to ask them to look into their crystal balls on who will come out on top November 6th, their predictions.
Hi, Paul. Good to see you.
Paul Beck.
Hi, nice to meet you.
University.
Sit down. Let's chat.
Yes, indeed.
So let's talk about midterms and how will that play out in Ohio, in the 12th district?
Well, this would be a district that would be written off as a Republican win. But because it is a referendum to some degree on the president, though it's a district that is majority Republican, still it makes it a competitive race.
How concerned should Republicans be about how tight it is in the 12th?
Well, I think they're worried, of course, about this Democratic wave.
Yes.
Whether it materializes or not, we'll see. Republicans have been very supportive of the policies, but then there's the style. And a lot of voters, Republican voters, don't particularly like the style. And the question will be, do they dislike it enough to want to cast a vote against a Republican running for Congress?
Okay, so you're going to come later.
I will be there.
We'll listen to the voters and we'll see whether they surprise both of us.
Yes, it'll be really interesting.
Okay, good. See you later.
Okay.
Settled and mic'd up and everything. So Mary, you're over here, and Carol, you're here. David, you're beside me over here. Steve, you're on the end. Roland, you're here in the middle. Tom is here. We did divide you along your thoughts because it'll just be easier for me to follow along.
All right, scene one, take 4.
Thanks for coming. So obviously we've split you up sort of into not such a big fan of the president, fan of the president. So Tom, I'm going to start with you. How do you think he's been doing in this first couple of years?
I think he's doing a very good job. One, he's doing what he said he was going to do. He said he was going to reform taxes, he reformed taxes. He said he was going to deregulate, he deregulated. And our economy is thriving because of that.
David, you're not a big fan.
Not at all a fan.
No. So how do you think he's doing in the job?
My greater concern is what I think is happening for the people in this country. And he is incredibly polarizing, has certainly given permission to for racism. For the expression, the overt expression of racism.
And you can give an example now. Give an example just so we all are on the same page in terms of what you're talking about.
Yeah, so I was out one night right after the election, walking my dog in the circle, and car comes by. Lots of cars like to take the little loop on our street, and slowed down, so I leaned in. And I was yelled at, "You go back to Africa, you black bee." This is on my street, in my neighborhood that I've lived in for 17 years. And I was so shocked that I wasn't sure it happened. Like, did I make that up?
Yeah, first of all, I acknowledge that. I was sorry to hear about that. It can't be tolerated. But I would say, you know, we all have experiences, right? We all have life experiences. You know, being a farm kid from Southeast Ohio, coming to Ohio State to Professor Beck's class back here, you know, we talk funny, we dress funny, and you know, so there's always some sort of a elitism where you don't fit in, right? Appalachian, Ohio is actually the poorest part of anywhere in the United States. We've been wanting someone like President Trump since I was a kid to recognize the greatness of our country, to instill pride in our country. A lot of support for Trump is we're tired of supporting politicians who say this to get elected, get the big primary win, then win in the general. Trump is following through on things, right?
Okay, Roland, how about you? What's your experience been in these first couple of years with this president?
You know, it's interesting. It's really not about the what, it's really about the how. from my perspective. I think leadership has certain characteristics, and a leader must be humble, must teach. A leader, in order for people to follow, must be an example. It is very difficult for me to follow Trump in that manner. It is very difficult for me to tell my kids, that the behavior, the language is acceptable. The lies is acceptable. So the business that he's creating in our culture, I think it's damaging, and I can't tell you to what extent, because it is being damaged. I don't know if it's going to be repaired, how it can be repaired.
Yeah. Tom, maybe I'll just get your thoughts on what Roland said there, just because I haven't heard you. And we're going to get back to this more, but yeah.
I was in the Marine Corps 24 years. I retired as Lieutenant Colonel. I certainly understand leadership. And humility is a leadership quality. But not every leader who's been successful has been humble. George Patton was not a humble person. Many presidents, and make no mistake about it, Donald Trump as a politician does not have a monopoly on lies of politicians. Okay, you could go back every administration, and you could probably pinpoint, if you will, lacks of integrity or lacks of honesty.
And I would agree with that. I think instigating it is the issue. I think, again, if you're misleading aggressively like he's doing it, it's difficult to identify when he's actually telling the truth and then when you can support it.
Okay, so it sort of leads us to the gender split we're seeing in the country. That we will see in the midterms if you look at some of the polls, and some of that is because of the way the president talks about women. So I want to show one tweet, and it's not just any woman, it is Stormy Daniels that he's talking about in this tweet, so let me show you the tweet. Great, now I can go after Horseface and her third-rate lawyer in the great state of Texas. She will confirm the letter she signed. She knows nothing about me. A total con. Mary, what did you think of that?
I don't think Donald Trump respects women. He's clearly shown that time and again, other than maybe his daughter, although that's kind of creepy too. Some of the things he said about Ivanka. I keep thinking hopefully Ivanka will take his phone away from him and stop him from tweeting, because particularly if you support him, he does more harm with these crazy tweets, and he doesn't have a lot of respect for people different from him.
What do you think, Tom? Do you think he is? And you have a daughter, so how do you relate to him?
I think he treats all people the same. I think he's an equal opportunity abuser or praiser, depending on who you are. If you are against him, if you punch him, he's going to punch you back hard. Whether you're a woman, a man, no matter what your race is, no matter what your ethnicity is, he's going to come at you. He is what he is. And I'm a substance over style kind of person. I think the substance of what he's doing as president overrides somewhat questionable style sometimes.
But if he worked in any company in America, he couldn't talk to people that way. He couldn't treat people that way. And to have the person who, is our representative to the rest of the world act that way is embarrassing as an American.
Talk about feeling embarrassed. We travel extensively. I feel like we're the laughing stock. It feels like we're the laughing stock. We have this beautiful system where we have a change of power every 4 years or every 8 years. Sometimes your guy's in, sometimes your guy's not. That's fine, okay? But the integrity, I think you talked about the integrity of the man, the status of the office. I think he has diminished it greatly.
I just really think people were tired of politicians. And that was probably one of my big things, because when you watch all this arguing, like the Kavanaugh hearings or any hearings, these people love to hear themselves talk. Love it. And, and it might mean nothing. There are so many things I wish Donald Trump didn't say. but he's not a politician.
I think that's a good argument a couple of years ago. He's a politician now. I mean, he's a politician. He's the president of the United States. So I think, yeah, if that was your criteria, one of your criteria for supporting him, I see that. I think that sentiment is not limited to conservatives, but I think that argument is dead now.
There was very little talk about policy.
Yeah.
Even though there have been some fairly sizable policy changes. Not much talk about foreign policy. I think Russia was never mentioned in all of this. I expected people who didn't like him to not like him because of his demeanor and his style, people who liked him more for their policies. But no, they liked the style also. They liked the fact, as several of them put it, that he's not a politician.
Yes.
Steve was saying, well, okay, I come from Appalachia, and I understand that people there feel like they've been left behind. Nobody seems to care about them. Politicians go down there, they make all these promises, and then nothing happens. Well, Trump comes along and he makes these promises, and indeed something happens. Now again, how well it'll hold up over time, we just don't know the answer to that.
Anybody who comes to the restaurant is going to look at our operator and not my husband as the owner.
We kind of ended up on this theme with a lot of people saying, I am worried. There's a disquiet out there that things, for one reason or another, are not going well, but part of the reason is the kind of polarization that we have in our society.
Anyone take 5?
One of the things happening in the news right now is this caravan of people making their way to the border. The president is portraying it in a particular way. So let me play that clip for you.
You see the people come up and you listen to the fake news back there and you think they're all wonderful people, right? No, you think, I'm serious, you think they're all wonderful people. You got some bad people in those groups, you got some tough people in those groups, and I'll tell you what, this country doesn't want them, okay? We don't want them.
It's a tough issue you guys have, like that press against the border. We just have all of you, so we don't have the same issue in Canada. But
I mean, to stop all immigration is not the answer.
I don't think that's being suggested at all. We are not against immigration. We are against illegal immigration. Illegal immigration is bad for the illegal immigrants. Mm-hmm. They get exploited. They're not getting paid a fair wage. They're not being taken care of. The journey here to the United States is very dangerous. And if for every dollar that we spend on a border patrol guy or on the wall, also spend money on legally bringing people into this country, we have a great need for labor in this country. Okay, and it's going to help people achieve some of their dreams, but it's got to be done legally.
Davia, you haven't weighed in on this one.
I'm sorry.
No?
I certainly don't know the answer to the immigration problem. And I think what I roil up against is that it is complex and it is nuanced, but it's being presented as us against them. They're bad, we're good. It is far more complex than that. If it wasn't, then we would have some sort of a solution.
But the divisions that we're talking about, have any of you experienced that on a personal level? And by that I mean like people that hear your thoughts and don't want to talk to you anymore, or you can't talk politics at the table.
Not my family.
Or
I mean, like my sisters, and we
Roland?
don't talk about it.
Yeah,
we'll go around because it sounds like you all have.
Yeah, I mean, exactly. I mean, I go to Florida, visit my family. You know, my dad is 91, a hardline Republican. I call my sister a Fox Republican. That's that's all she repeats. But that's their belief, and they think I'm like, you married a Midwestern woman, live in Ohio,
and
what happened, you know? So yeah, there's a difficult conversations we have, and I will tell you, with my sister, we just don't talk about it.
Right. You cannot have a conversation where you avoid Trump. And that became clear because he is such a polarizing figure. And it is scary for me to say in the country that I love that I fear on a regular my son and my sons.
Tell me what you
silly.
feel about your sons, though, when you say.
I fear for them.
Oh, fear for them.
I fear for them. I fear for them. Because they feel as if they, this is the country they love. This is all they know. They don't want to be anywhere else, and I don't want them to be anywhere else. This is our home. But I've watched them try not to be demoralized when they have interactions with either law enforcement or even just their friends as things have changed in this climate. Friendships are different.
You know what I think is disturbing, though? We're not even 2 years into this, and look at it. There's so much hate.
Right.
But you look at some of it too, is just
Interview
the
us
whole,
in 2020, imagine that.
the red state, blue state thing. I mean, you know, just geographically,
Yes.
the middle of the country is different from the coast, and hopefully we're not headed towards another civil war kind of thing. But
Right.
there are huge differences.
But that's a recent thing, you know, you're starting to see politics line up, you know, based on cultural differences, whereas before, Republicans and Democrats, independents, like, everybody kind of went to the same church, went to the same grocery store, worked at the same factories, what have you. Now, like, our lives are different, right? And I think that's a growing concern for me. It's culturally, we might become different.
The midterm is going to happen. You're all going to vote. What happens the next day and the days after? Does any of this, the division that you all acknowledge exists, that none of you really like, does it go away after the midterms? What happens?
Well, for myself,
Yeah.
I know that I tend to be open and balanced, and I feel like I don't have the luxury of being balanced. That I have to respond to the polarism by being polarized. It's just a
Yeah,
mess.
you know,
So I am hopeful because there are mechanisms. You can vote, you can campaign, you can. So I'm hopeful. I don't know how to describe. I'm not joyful. Maybe that's what it is. There's something. The shine is gone for me.
Okay, that's a good place to leave it. Thank you all. It's really
Thank
nice
you.
to meet you.
Absolutely.
I learned a lot from
It was
you.
delightful.
Yeah, it was great.
Safe travels back.
Enjoy it.
Thank you.
Yeah, I'd love to come back.